Midweek edition of Viewpoint on Dbs Television. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and thank you very much for joining us. On today's edition, we will be talking issues related to decentralization in Cameroon, moving from the France CFA to the eco currency, and of course the French and the American involvement in finding a solution to the Anglophone crisis. With us here in the studio is a Pan-Africanist. I'm talking of Derek Ngalim, and we're having Mange Venashus again, always here on board to accompany us in this 26 to 30 minutes program. Good evening to you, Derek, and thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Vanessa, for inviting once more.
Mange Venashus, it's a pleasure having you again.
The pleasure is mine, Vanessa. Good evening, and good evening to our viewers.
Viewpoint is divided into two parts, that is the yes or no question and answer, and later on we are having the debate. So coming up at this present moment is the first part. Once more, welcome back. Question 1. Is the process of decentralization actually practiced in Cameroon? I begin with you, Derek.
No.
No, it is not. Mange Venashus?
No, Vanessa.
No. Question 2. Is the advent of the eco currency a sign of hope to liberate Africa from foreign financial control? Derek?
No.
Venashus?
I said the same opinion, no.
No. And our last question, are the positions of America and France helpful in the reconstruction plan of the Northwest and the Southwest regions? Derek?
Yes.
Venashus?
No, Vanessa.
No. Coming up next, let us have the debate, so stay tuned because it's getting interested. In our first question, the process of decentralization actually practiced in Cameroon. Derek, you say no. Talking about the process in relation to the change of from government delegates to city mayors, and at the same time still maintaining the fact that we have mayors in the various municipalities. You think that the decentralization process is not taking place, or rather ask, how effective is the change of the name? Is it affecting the process of governance in the regions?
If it's the change of name alone, I would think it's just a mockery of itself. Because if 24 years after the 1996 Constitution gave impetus to decentralization as a fundamental principle of governance, we are still asking this question, whether decentralization is being practiced in Cameroon, then I think we are back to the beginning. And if you look at it closely, Article 55 of the 1996 Constitution held very strongly that local development and governance are central attributes of decentralization. But I guess when you look at how developed Cameroon is today, I don't think you will stand for the fact that decentralization is working in Cameroon. And to be honest with you, I would say Cameroonian decentralization is risible in itself. It's something one can laugh at because it's built around the edifice, the dictum of the president, Si Yaoundé souffle, le Cameroun va bien. And I guess it's the reason why only the misfortunes or the liabilities of centralization are decentralized. Believe you me or not, every phrase about decentralization in Cameroon is loftily worded. But when you get into the pragmatic phase of it, it becomes a contradiction in itself. Look at it, let's be honest with ourselves. The authorities in the central government, they cling so much to the centralized system of government because the lion's share of what they enjoy is too much to let go. And that is why when you look around, what is actually decentralized in Cameroon are the misfortunes of a centralized system. You will get lofty loans, in industrial loans or business loans that come into the country, hundreds of billions of maybe franc CFA or the dollar or the euro or the whatsoever. When they reach here, the projects never see the light of day. You are aware of that. The projects never see the light of day. But when it comes to the taxes to repay these loans, that's when the Cameroonians know that there were some loans that were contracted on their behalf. I should say in quotes, on their behalf, because we never get to see what the loans are used for. But the benefits for these loans, they remain with the central system.
So do you see any difference in the role of being a city mayor and the former position of government delegate?
There is no difference, because you will not even occupy that position if you are not in complete connivance with the central government. They know who they put there. And believe me, if decentralization was actually practiced in Cameroon, what would be the need of bags of money being transported under gun protection from the various regions or local councils to Yaoundé at the end of every month? Normally, the areas were supposed to run the payment of civil servants, the projects that are available, and at the end of it, whatever is left could be forwarded to the central government for reasons we best know, for running of the central government. But if everything has to be transported to the center, and then finally what comes back is not even sufficient to keep the various regions running, then I guess it's a failure as far as decentralization is concerned.
Thank you very much for your viewpoint. Mange Venashus, your point on this, you also for the fact that the process of decentralization is not actually practiced in Cameroon.
Actually, Vanessa, in 1996, when this concept of decentralization came into the political landscape of Cameroon, Cameroonians saw a glimmer of hope if this concept was actually put into place. But we discovered that it has delayed for all this while, and when we started talking about it again, more than 20 years after, we are coming to a kind of preaching decentralization and practicing centralized system of administration. Vanessa, if we were to put into practice decentralization in Cameroon, then that would have been a sure way into development. When we talk of local collectivities, when we talk of municipal elected representatives, these are the people who live the reality of what is happening in each municipality. They understand the specific need of this particular quarter, of this particular neighborhood, more than what the minister would understand in Yaoundé. But these mayors, they are elected, yes, but it's just like giving somebody a gift with a string. Their hands are not free to carry out what they are supposed to do. We still have, Vanessa, when we talk of government delegate to city mayor, what has changed? What has actually changed? City mayor, if we understand, we take just for example what happened in the city of Douala. We understood the kind of gymnastics that had to go with for the city mayor to be elected. Does it have to bring in the implication of Yaoundé to impose a city mayor in a city that is supposed to to elect their own superior? Because the whole concept is the elected councillors come together and elect a city mayor. But then this city mayor, it is not a super mayor like we had with the government delegate syndrome in Cameroon. It is just one of them. It coordinates their activities. But each mayor is supposed to be independent in his municipality. He is supposed to carry out developmental activities in his municipality without the influence. The central government controls it and does not influence it. It's not supposed to influence it. But we have a situation here where we still have mayors, they still have to write and apply for funds from FEICOM to carry out developmental aspect in their municipality. Yet we talk of decentralization. What is decentralized? When we talk of decentralization, what is decentralized in Cameroon? So I think that if we want to talk about developing Cameroon, if we want to look at how to develop this country in the next years ahead of us, then this process of decentralization has to be implemented. I remember the minister in charge of decentralization and local development, at the beginning of the year, he made it clear that there are no funds for the implementation of decentralization. We are talking about a process that was initiated 24 years ago, and then coming to put it into practice, we don't have the funds. Yet we want to preach decentralization. So I think that it is high time we we prioritize issues here in Cameroon. What is the priority? Is it for the development of the people? And I think for the development is supposed to be, initiated from the grassroots, not from the central system of government. It is supposed to be initiated by the local municipalities. They are supposed to initiate their development because they understand what the people need. The people may not want, they may need a road, and you come and offer them water. It helps them in no way. They may need water, and you come and offer them a road. It helps them in no way. So I think that these municipal authorities, they are in direct touch with the local population. They are in direct touch with the people and with the neighborhoods. They understand what they need best. So I think if we are talking about decentralization, I think if it is practiced the way it was conceived, remember it is not a Cameroonian concept. It is a concept that is being applied in some other countries, and where it is applied, we see the results. So we think that Cameroon will not be different to preach decentralization and practice centralization. Vanessa.
Thank you also for your viewpoint, Mange Financials. Question 2 we are asking, is the advent of the eco currency a sign of hope to liberate Africa from foreign financial control? Derek, you think that it is no sign that Africa will be liberated from foreign control as far as currency is concerned? The West African regional bloc, they want to change their currency, and Simak thought that no, it would be a good idea if we joined in that line to change our own, that is completely living from the franc CFA and adopt the eco currency. Yet you think that that will not set us free from control or from the Westerners?
I'm convinced it will not set us free. I wish it were a complete departure like you actually suggest from the franc CFA. But unfortunately, it is not. And I would like to make it clear here. Sugarcoating a dangerous idea doesn't make it not poisonous simply because sugar has been wrapped on it. Sugar is just, let's call it a prey or the temptation that will push you to swallow the poison with the sugar, whether you like it or not. And when you look at the ECO, it is true the ECO was adopted in 2000, right? And the intention was that in 2003 it was going to be officially introduced, but it was postponed. It's always the foreign policies to postpone what is not in their favor, and it has been postponed from then to 2005, then to 2010, and before 2010 reached, it was preceded by, let me call it a suicidal attempt to merge the ECO with the franc CFA. And since that was largely opposed by economies like Nigeria, I mean, the intention of France was simply to rename the franc CFA the ECO. And you know the reason why? Because a complete departure or abandoning of the franc CFA would have entailed, I mean, hundreds of billions of losses for the giant parasite. They keep between 50 and 65% of the reserves of 15 or 14 African countries. And you know what that means? That is about $500 billion per year. we had independence, let's say the presumed independence in 1961. If you were to count 500 billion of 14 countries from 1961 till today, you would imagine how much France has in her reserve, and then to believe that she will just suddenly get up and say Africans are free to part with the franc CFA. To me, it's not realistic. One important question: who is going to print the echo? Who is going to manage the echo? Where are the foreign reserves of these African or West African countries going to be stored? Do you think it's going to be in Africa? Do you think ECOWAS will be put in charge of all of these? What is the reason for the endless postponement of the ECO? I've already explained that France does not know how she will suddenly part with her gold mine.
Anyway, the hands that feeds them.
Yes.
So how do they think? How would they separate from it?
And therefore, the only thing they have is to keep postponing. And like they say, time heals all wounds. They are hoping that with time, there is going to be a compromising position where these countries will come back to some favorable terms with them. I don't even know what makes me say these countries had independence in 1961, because as far as I'm concerned, the franc CFA is the French monetary imperialism.
So
that's the icon.
So if you think now, if this will not liberate us from being financially independent from France, what can be done? What can African leaders do to officially own their own currency and run within the continent?
If only African leaders could resist the temptation for the chicken change that is given to them from these foreign governments that keep corrupting them, then I think all we need to do is bring out our own currency. Why should we have the desire to change our currency? And it is the French president who announces that some 14 African countries wish to change the currency. Who should be expressing the wish? Do I get hungry and you announce my hunger? Therefore, the only thing that can liberate us, if these African presidents could come together, right? Decide on their currency, decide that they will be the ones to print their currency, they will be the central bank for their currency, they will be the managers of their currency, and they are going to keep the reserves of their currencies with them, instead of keeping a whooping 60 to 65% or 50 to 65% of your reserves with France. At the end of the day, you are allowed to use just 15% of that reserve. And if you so desire to use beyond 15%, you have to pay France for whatever percentage you need to use in addition to your annual 15% at economic percentages or charges or market charges. Therefore, it's altogether slavery. Let me say it. The franc CFA, is the toughest chain of slavery that ever was stuck onto African bodies. And if France breathes, it's because the franc CFA is under their control, and the ECO will not be different. That's why it has faced a lot of opposition from countries like Nigeria, countries like Ghana, you have Guinea-Conakry, because they don't get to understand how the currency will be theirs. You do the printing for them, you do the managing for them, you keep their reserves. Anyway,
the basic decisions are dependent on them. Thank you very much. Mange Venashus, do you think it's just a change of name, or that there is a hope for African continent being independent?
Vanessa, I don't see any hope at all. Like Mr. Ngalimo was asking a question, why should France be the one to come and initiate, tell Africans that they should move away from the franc CFA? Do you see, when I listened to French president talking, I did not see any sincerity in what he was saying. From there, where are we? What has happened? And immediately when he had that discussion, one French minister refused the idea and said France is not ready for the CFA to be changed. What is happening here is, when we talk of depending on foreign, foreign powers, it's like you have money in my pocket and you claim that you have money. I decide when you should use it. I decide how much of your money you should use, and it is your money, and I have it in my keeping. That's where the whole situation is. And when I look at these African countries, the current pandemic, the coronavirus, has x-rayed, the kind of slavery we have been living in since the 60s. Because when this pandemic struck in Europe, like in Africa, you get European countries giving out incentives, giving out allowances to make sure that they cushion the impact of the pandemic. We can't do that in Cameroon. That is why we keep borrowing from them with an interest to pay, whereas they are keeping our reserves. So I think that when we talk of moving away from the franc CFA to the eco currency, it is the same thing. We are merely changing the attire. It is the same, the same policy. What I would have expected French president, to do, in as much as we are talking about moving away from this currency, Vanessa, we encourage this concept of regional blocking. When they come together, when they come together in blocks, it helps them. That is a fact. Just like in Europe, we are talking about the European Union. But then the countries that make up this European Union, they have their individual currencies. Besides the euro, which is the currency that is used within the bloc. Each country has its own currency. And that's what makes them independent. They decide on how to use it for the betterment of their particular country. Now, when French president brings the idea to Africa and is talking about the echo for these African countries, he silenced the idea of each country having its own currency. And when we look at Africa as a continent, we discover that economies in Africa that are showing signs of growth, economies in Africa that are progressed, they have their currencies. I take, for example, our next door Nigeria, they have their Naira. South Africa has their South African Rand. Northern African countries, they have their currencies that they use independently. Nobody decides on how much money Nigeria prints to use. When needs arises, they use it. But then, when we in Cameroon, for us to do something in Cameroon, we need to take the permission from France. How independent are we? So I think that when we talk of changing from franc CFA to ECO, if that is an idea that came up from African presidents, it could make sense. You were asking Derek, what should be done? I think that African presidents should have that courage. It should not be a bloc to act, because when they are acting as a bloc, it is difficult. Individuals should decide and say that from today my country stops using the franc CFA. We may not even use the ECO if it is not a bloc currency. But then my country will be using this particular currency. We just need a brave African president to do that. Once that African president will pluck the courage to do that, I believe that others will follow. And if they follow, Vanessa, I think that we would have been migrating or moving away from this French imperialism to a kind of independence that we have been, pretending to have from the 1960s.
All right, since you have the floor, let us take out that question. Are the positions of America and France helpful in the reconstruction plan of the Northwest region and the Southwest region? Mangavinashus, you think that they are not helpful. Concerning the reconstruction of these two regions, France is in support of reconstruction. They've actually approved that we will support in the reconstruction process, and America thinks that it will not be possible to reconstruct the regions without the drop of arms.
Yes, Vanessa, when we talk of reconstructing the Northwest and the Southwest region, when you look at the position of this Western powers, you tend to I tend to have it difficult to draw a line between their being for and their being against. France, at least, say that they support the idea of reconstruction, to reconstruct in the case of war. And I think that it is not helpful, because they give the impression that, Vanessa, there's nobody who is all-knowing. A country, a government can make an error. We give the impression that we can succeed. It is true, the concept, the idea as it stands to reconstruct the two regions is a laudable idea. But the approach we are taking to carry out that laudable idea is where the problem lies. What is wrong to call for a ceasefire and then reconstruct? How can we reconstruct? When we talk of reconstruction, it means it was destroyed and we want to reconstruct. Meanwhile, the war is still going. What happens if we, and in as much as we are reconstructing and going, the destruction continues behind? Insecurity reigns in these regions. It is not it is no longer a secret. This week we are reporting of explosions that have resumed again in Bamenda. But then, where are these technicians or all those involved in the reconstruction process? How will they go about doing the work? Movement just within the region is impossible. Presently, many parts of these regions are completely cut off from the rest of the country because you cannot just go there at will. I cannot go to my village.
They are cut off even just from the regional,
from the regional capital, Bamenda. So,
yes.
So when we talk of reconstructing, are we going to reconstruct the regional capital? And in most of these regional capitals, they are not as hard touched like the peripheral divisions. So I think that these
think like America
is coming out to tell us that we cannot succeed. The plan will fail because we need to construct it within the context of a ceasefire. That may have some point, but then to come out with their sincerity at one point, diplomatic issues come in and you don't know where they belong. So I think that they are not helping the situation at all. I think Cameroonians should sit down and look at their situation, and then I think that they will come to a headway out of this crisis, Vanessa.
Okay, Derek, you rather think that they are helping the situation?
I would say they're helping the situation because I'm not looking at reconstruction in terms of infrastructural reconstruction anymore, because I know infrastructural reconstruction will never take any first step as far as the war is still on. But I think my understanding of reconstruction here is in relation to the noise about the form of the state, because I love the conflict between America and France, because it's actually helping us to come to accept the fact that there is need to reconstruct the form of the state as far as the northwest and the southwest are concerned. I love the word reconstruction. It at least confirms the fact that the area was constructed at first before the mistake of unification, which saw the already constructed area destroyed before we're talking about reconstruction. And I say their positions are helpful because once we come to realize the fact that there is a need to reconstruct the form of the state, I think the areas, when they get back to be able to run their own activities as they did before, reconstruction will not fail to come our way. So that is the approach from where I look at it, and I'm convinced that their conflicting positions are helpful because they will gradually or eventually come to inevitably bring us to the possibility of reconstruction.
All right. Thank you very much, Derek. And thank you for coming to Your Viewpoint Matters a Lot. Mange Venashus, thank you as well for your contribution.
Thank you, Vanessa.
All right, we have come to the end of the show. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to DBS Television on Thursday. We'll be right back, God willing. And so do take care and stay safe, stay free out of the coronavirus pandemic. Good day.